On this episode of the podcast, I have with me John Cottongim. He is the co-founder and CTO at Roots Automation. We're going to be talking about process automation within the context of the insurance industry. John's got a great background, comes from the industry. And we're going to be talking about that legacy. There's obviously common understanding that there's a lot of legacy within the insurance industry. Modernization's happening. You have to understand those processes to understand what should be touched, what should not be touched. And how do you take advantage of advanced technologies? Like, how do you put these Gen AI models into place? And I'm excited to have John on and talk about all this and see where Roots Automation fits into this dynamic. John, thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right, Roots Automation. Obviously, I hinted you guys do something in the insurance space, but I'd love for you to tell the audience what you guys do.
Fantastic. So Roots Automation, the big picture is that we build, train, and host what we'll call digital coworkers for the insurance industry, powered by our leading generative AI technology. We call it InsureGPT. We take on, think of it as the full role at one of our insurance partners that we work with. That could be in the claims side, perhaps in claims intake or underwriting within underwriting submission prep. We interact with our customers' subject matter experts. We leverage the data and those interactions to help feed back into the models and make everything we do here that much more intelligent and helpful to our customers, delivering efficiency, hopefully better outcomes for, of course, the customers we work with, but ultimately the end users of the insurance products as well.
All right. So process automation within the insurance space. Obviously, you mentioned something that I think most people would agree with, that, or at least from the outside looking in, it looks like there's a lot of legacy within insurance company, within the tech stacks. How accurate is that? Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, it's probably an under assessment, if anything, once you get under the hood. Not to name names, but we work with a lot of large companies that come from a large insurance company in the past, having worked at AIG for 13 years. And the amount of legacy systems are often in the triple or quadruple digit range across these companies. The IT budgets can range into the billions of dollars, and it's not all being spent on cloud. Right? A lot of that is being spent on upkeeping these legacy systems that, frankly, listen, they've worked for a very long time. Some of those products might not even be sold currently today. So why touch something that isn't broken? But you do have to upkeep it. You still may have new, fresh claims coming in. They're going to live and persist for quite a while.
Awesome. You touched on being AIG, and obviously Roots Automation within the context is within the insurance space. You spent a bit of time at AIG, and you understand obviously the inner workings of large insurance companies. Out of curiosity, how did that background, how did that help with the Roots Automation at its core and kind of starting the company?
Yeah, so it's probably just worth mentioning kind of how I made my trajectory through the career there briefly, which is having come from front office and worked my way into let's say the middle and the operations space, and then ultimately the back end and IT space. So I think the first way to improve is to recognize where the challenges are. And I did that early on in the career, having been an underwriter, seeing and working with the systems that were in place, also being intimate with some of the attempted improvements as well around those systems, which led me to get into internal consulting and finding the challenges across the company. That was really the job, was to find those challenges and ultimately solve them. Some of the challenges were people-oriented, but more and more over time, we started to focus on how to leverage technology to solve those challenges, which led me to take over a process automation team, leverage some of the, now kind of think of it as legacy process automation software to layer on top of those systems, and ultimately solve some of those challenges in situ without trying to rebuild systems on top. But intimate knowledge of that. And I would say there's nothing special, right, about the experience that I had there at AIG. When we chat with customers today, it's a common tale. And I think our our understanding of it, our ability to talk to it, and know our customers' pain, if you will, is one of the reasons why they're so gracious and let us into their door and help collaborate and try to solve the problems today.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think when you're able to have that on the ground understanding baseline, I think everything changes quite a bit as you're building out your company. When you're looking at the insurance industry and you're looking at advanced technologies, I guess the conversation with a lot of people that I have on is about data and data quality and the imperfections in data to be able to do more with it. And I don't know what that more is yet. I think people are still trying to figure that out. But from at a baseline, and you're kind of looking at the insurance industry and data, the opportunities you mentioned, obviously lots of data, lots of legacy. In terms of taking advantage of that data, kind of walk us through where the state is of just general, broadly speaking, in the insurance industry. Are you seeing companies that are able to take advantage of advanced technologies? Are there issues with their data? Are they still building foundational pieces? Kind of what are you seeing?
Insurance is an interesting space because outside of maybe the most simplistic car insurance that's out there, which might have a fairly straightforward process to it and data process as well, the property and casualty industry, which we focus a good deal on, it's done in a fairly traditional way with emails and attachments, lots of different free-form documents and more rigid documents. Rigid documents with attachments to them because the forms didn't satisfy the needs that they were originally developed for. So there's just these layers of complexity to it. And the standards from a data capture standpoint, there really are none across the industry. So with that, every time we step into a new customer and discuss data and their data quality, there's no understanding of what the data points are, what format they should be in, if there's a completeness of capture, whether those data points were captured from structured documents or perhaps layered in over a series of phone conversations because there were gaps in the data. And so this is all to say, it is extremely challenging to ask somebody who isn't intimately aware of the data challenges to take one of these, let's say, hyper new and very impressive technologies and think that you could layer that on top of maybe some documents that already exist here, information that exists in other systems over there, and think that you can get a production grade solution out of that. The other comment I'll just have is that this has been borne out of what was probably a decade or maybe up to 2 decades attempt at building something called data lakes at these large companies, trying to house their data in a single location to be leveraged across products or across use cases. That I'll put sort of the stake in the ground has largely gone to waste because of the data quality issues that you see there. We spend a lot of time in education of data quality and how we manage and deal with that with these AI technologies as we get into the projects with our customers. So it's a huge part of the education and how we become successful ultimately with these projects.
Absolutely. I guess there's 2 components that we're kind of talking about. One, obviously, data quality. Other is automating a process, identifying that process. Obviously, whatever happens within that change to that process will potentially have, implications to the data, what's captured, the amount of data that will now be usable post-process within an automation. As you're kind of looking at that opportunity of going, well, I do understand there's a lot of processes that can be optimized, automated, and there is an impact to data. How do you kind of balance that? Because obviously we do sit on a lot of data. We want to improve processes. There's areas to automate. I guess there's maybe 2 questions in there. One is, how do you identify what's to be automated? And secondly is, do we worry about the legacy data as we're going through those automations and changes?
Yeah, and I think inherent in your question is also maybe talking, do we worry about the legacy process as well in there? So just to start at the beginning, right? Maybe we'll just say let's take the first one, which is what should be automated. Where should we go and tackle this? I think what I'd say is the number one mistake people make is to find something that is intriguing but not too impactful. They're thinking to themselves, "Hey, this is a great problem to solve, and if I blow it up by accident, no one's going to come find me here and sort of smack me on my knuckles." But the reality is, if you become successful, no one's going to come find you and pat you on the back either. And these projects more and more now, I think I don't have an article to cite off the top of my head, but I believe the average Gen AI automation and custom build takes something like $4 to $5 million of all-in investment. So if that's going to be the case, well, you better have a return that's at least equivalent to that in the first year, two at the very most, given the likelihood of failure rates and these sorts of things. So I believe you have to go big, but there's some cheats for this, right? So you should know where there's large streams of similar processes happening at your company. My hack is there's often teams with the very name of the process that they're running, right? So there's likely a claims intake team, a whole group of people that they're specialists in this one piece of that process. There is no such thing as an end-to-end process in insurance, right? This is an ecosystem. This is a multi-stage, multi-timed environment, but there are people who have specific jobs that are also the name of their process. Great hack to go chat with them and ask them how they do their job, how they train new members coming in. Is that something that they have done in a repetitive way? And right, something like the legal team, okay, it might be obvious what they do, but how they train people on the way in, well, they send them to school for 8 years first. And this is not your opportunity. You're going to want something that is explainable, that's high volume, and that's high impact for the company. That's the first way I would find the processes to look at.
I guess you mentioned something interesting about, there's a team that identifies with that process. They're probably responsible for data quality. The data flows someplace else. The data gets ingested and is used in further things. Who knows how far down process it goes. But when you're kind of looking at, and we touched on data quality, and we're looking at some of the issues that exist, it certainly seems like, obviously, if you're automating something, you get a chance to have a little bit of a green field if you want and have a clean slate, which is gift and a curse, because obviously you can go, okay, now I can get things the way I need them, how I'm going to use this data downstream. But I guess you lose the volume of data, the historical context. And I mean, obviously that's a gap. I think this is going to be something most companies deal with that are looking at Gen AI solutions. It's not a one size fits all, but I am just kind of curious, as you have seen a lot of these process automations go through, how do teams typically deal with that data potentially losing and truncating some of the history? Is it something that's even that they should be looking at, or is it, work with the data best you can to salvage what you can in a new automation, a new process?
Yeah, so it's twofold. One, there's data looking back, and then there's understanding how data moves and changes in the future. There's no reason you should be only looking at go forward data. There's a process that hasn't changed immensely over the years, most likely, that you're going to be looking at. There's good data there. Now, data quality may be suspect. One of the most frequent things that we see is that the process has been updated and tweaked over the years, sometimes to the point where even the experts in that process disagree with what the ground truth answer should be on something. So, for instance, there would be, if we're doing a classification of documents, for example, an invoice for a medical bill, there might be a medical document type, there might be an invoice type, Now, this medical invoice is really going to straddle that line. And so somebody somewhere has an opinion about where that goes, but you're likely to see some confusion in the data. And if you're fine-tuning a machine learning model on top of this, well, now you have a little bit of fuzziness. You have a lack of confidence in there. And what that'll mean in a practical sense is that as we're setting up these solutions for our customers, we're raising up those questions. So now you have the oracle, if you will, pointing out where the confusion lies within the process. Often it was likely born out of one mistake in the past or one incident in the past, and that category got bolted on for a reason that is probably lost to corporate knowledge at this point. So you do have the opportunity, I would say, to go back and review the sensicalness of these processes, of how we categorize, and almost always, I don't think I've ever seen it go the other way. We are simplifying the way that the teams do business when we collaborate and work together. That said, almost never do we really change a process. I think there's a lot of overreach that happens, particularly when teams are internal to a company that are looking to improve processes, where they go to process change first, process optimization, process design. We have almost the luxury, being a third party coming from the outside, to say my change management heft at this customer of mine is going to be very small from the outside. And that gives me the pleasure to say, I'm gonna fit into your process. I'm not going to be scary in the sense of I'm not going to ask your SMEs to change the way they work. I really want to be able to slide into there, collaborate with those SMEs, make their day better without asking for too much from them. And I think that's a great way to work. If you're going to design a new system and put in a new process at some later point, that's fantastic. But if we're looking to gain improvements and traction today, which a lot of insurance companies are helping to improve that expense ratio, let's keep it in situ and let's get the benefits out of it today.
Interesting. As you were mentioning, you mentioned the bolt-on to process to account for something, and I kind of was thinking about, obviously on the engineering side, there's a notion of tech debt, which are decisions made in the past to address whatever needs were required. Right now, we're going back and kind of inspecting those and going, well, you could have made a better decision. A lot of hindsight, and I guess there is a lot of reactive process debt. Something goes wrong. Well, let's fix it by doing this. And maybe we don't identify the core issue of that process, and then we just go on and we build on. And I'm just assuming this is what happens when it's, let's say, just talking about in the insurance industry, a lot of processes that, hey, we saw this slip through, let's fix it, let's add this on. No one's really going back to look at that, previous process debt to go, did we address this? Do we still need this? Or are we just, layering on another piece of the process on top? And then you got this whole Frankenstein type of thing where now, as you kind of been talking about, it's very complex, very difficult. The data quality suffers because of it. It's not easy to manage. And as you're looking to simplify these things and you're looking to rip these things apart, when you're looking at user adoption and you're talking to people that have gotten comfortable doing things inefficiently, right? They've gotten really good at inefficiency. And that's kind of how these things sometimes roll out. How do you work with them? Because obviously they know there's pain there, but they're just not used to it. How do you work with them to help them go through that adoption process to really use the new process and not do what they previously did?
The way that we engage and work with our customers, I think, is a bit unique in the industry, in the sense of we're not providing tools for a toolkit. We're not looking to improve one component of the process or one aspect of it. What we're looking to do is really slide in there and be able to do as much of the end-to-end process as is possible. We're looking to kind of pick that low-hanging fruit off, but do it in a way that is completely sight unseen, right? So unlike a lot of the generative AI solutions that you know of well, those are chatbots that are meant to be kind of paired with somebody in a very active way. But these digital coworkers, you could think of them as remote employees, logging into systems, finding work, and only when challenges arise are they raising that up to the subject matter experts at the customer, asking for feedback, asking for an opportunity for improvement through there. And so our goal is always to improve quality of life for our customers, SMEs, and not to have them essentially have the option, to make the option, need to have that cognitive thought process of, do I use this digital coworker in this instance or not? Because the digital coworker is always ahead of the process, trying to set up that underwriting file as far along as it can get it successfully and confidently, and then hand off something that looks 80% ready for production, 80% ready for the then cognitive work to be done by the human team. With that, you see like these amazing little nugget, stories that come about where like a hurricane happens in Texas, and the claims team is expecting to show up on Monday with just a crazy backlog of claims that need to be just acknowledged that they came in, so the customers for the insurance company feel heard, right? And they're going to get set up with an adjuster and move forward. But now the digital coworker has found that 70 to 80% can be handled straight through. Those claims are acknowledged. Folks come in on Monday, and all of a sudden it's not this mad rush panic, or the overtime doesn't need to happen. Folks could go pick up their kids from school as normal when these events happen. And the end customers feel like there's something of a modern process happening in the background there. If you treat it in this fashion of augmenting the workforce, of prepping and preparing for the cognitive work to happen, that's a great way to think about how we can benefit the team, but also then benefit the end customer and make it feel like a modern process again.
Interesting. I guess as you guys are working hand in hand and you're seeing these advanced technologies, Gen AI, other technologies companies are trying to, in the insurance space, leverage. In terms of the know-how, and obviously we talked about AIG, your background, having that understanding. When it comes to the insurance industry and Gen AI, we'll just kind of maybe tackle that. What's going to be the potential, if you're looking through that kind of crystal ball, like as you're looking at the solutions that are going to make impacts, how narrow will solutions be versus is there potential for a wider insurance product that's going to address a lot of different problems, or there's just going to be a lot of series of narrow models that are going to do that?
Yeah, I think what the public got introduced to has been almost obscenely wide models, right? They've memorized all the US presidents, and they can write you a poem, and they can do some C code if they needed to, right? It's just amazing things. I think the challenge is, particularly for certain industries like insurance, a lot of the nomenclature, the ways of working, the types of documents that we handle, they're not in public record, and they're quite unique to the industry. I think of this much as the way that we don't think about going out and hiring the absolute general smartest person we possibly can. We want to hire somebody who's a 10 or 20-year vet in the industry. They know all the ins and outs of it, and so they could be productive on day one, and they know and like, hopefully, the work that they do in that space. What we're absolutely seeing and what we're focused on here at Roots is delivering a more narrow AI in the generative AI space. That enables us, and we're extremely focused on fine-tuning these Gen AI models on our proprietary insurance data sets such that they become narrow experts. Maybe we haven't really checked. They might have forgotten who the 13th president is at this point, but they understand what retention means on a deck page of a D&O policy. So this is where they need to be. We also expect over time, even within our own solutions, that will be separating underwriting and claims Gen AI algorithms, because even they have different ways of speaking about the same document, and that's actually it's really interesting. You have to be able to give context to be successful. The more context you can give, be that using a traditional machine learning algorithm to feed in the document classification or category that you're then asking a question about to be more specific, how you're prompting these AI algorithms, or even what is the job we're looking to get done, while then asking the appropriate questions to perhaps extract data or make a determination if there's a request for payment in this legal document, let's say. So narrow AIs will certainly be the way we go. A web of narrow AIs one day might run a good bulk of an insurance company. And that orchestration layer is something that when people are POCing these solutions, often are not ready to tackle or thinking about, because that's going to be a huge part of the ecosystem in the next 5 years. Is how do we orchestrate all these AIs? How do we continue to make sure they learn and keep up with the changing data and knowledge ecosystem? Because past data, past performance, right, is only so good. The world changes, new laws get enacted. Lawyers love adding new clauses into these contracts. So we have to make sure that we're ready for a changing world as well.
Absolutely. Fascinating. Lots of moving parts. I'm sure as you're knee deep in it, you're seeing things move both really slow and fast at the same time. I wanted to thank you, John, for being on the show, chatting with us today. If someone does want to continue the conversation, talk to you about insurance automation, digital workers, what's a good way of connecting with you?
Yeah, so best way is over email. I'm not the best socials guy, so simply john@rootsautomation.com comes right to me. If you want to chat with the sales folks, sales@rootsautomation.com will have a whole bevy of folks intrigued to talk to you as well. But if it's also just chatting about technology in the industry, I mean, it's moving so fast, and I absolutely love thinking about where it's headed, thinking about what the next 5 years in what's called the future of work looks like. So happy to have anybody reach out and have a chat.
Awesome, John. Thanks again. Appreciate it. That's it for this episode. Be back again, different guest, different topic. Until then, two things. One, I think John kind of walked us through a couple different issues around dealing with quality of data, dealing with legacy processes within the insurance space, what's changing, how narrow AI is going to potentially be a part of that solution, and just a lot of moving parts. I think the insurance industry is seeing a lot of change, and will hopefully take advantage of all this data and really leverage some of this technology to do exactly what John has said. Share this with somebody else who might find this podcast episode interesting. Also, like, subscribe, comment, let me know how the podcast is doing for you. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.